All right. So this is Danny Santos coming back at you with the Astro Daddy podcast. And today you guys are in for a treat. We have the incredible Amir Ouaddi. Hello, Amir. How's it going?
Hello, Astro Daddy.
Welcome, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so great.
Good. Yeah. For anybody who's listening, his outfit's amazing. He's got these amazing shades on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So you and I actually met at the Awakening of Consciousness conference that was here in Los Angeles.
Correct.
And I got to witness you singing a beautiful ikaro that was given to you by your teacher. Why don't we just start off by having you introduce yourself, talk about a little bit about your medicine practice, who you are, just a little intro.
Okay. Amir Ouaddi. I was born and raised in San Pedro, California, here in Los Angeles, June 6, 1989.
That's right, baby.
So
6'6".
That makes me 33. Yeah, 6'6". My birthday was on 666 when I turned 16,
hey.
Actually.
That's some numerology.
Yeah, hey, fucking A, man. Is swearing okay?
Yeah. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, man. Grew up there. Kind of a pretty typical, like, urban situation, LA gang-dominated 90s era,
For sure.
So grew up around seeing a lot of that and also kind of being drawn to that. So I was lost for most of my childhood, as I think many of us are. And made a lot of bad decisions, did a lot of exploring as a young kid. And that led me down some really dark paths. I picked up some really bad habits, with addiction to certain substances. And that dominated a lot of my life, pretty much from like 12 years old to not too long ago,
Yeah.
It's been an ongoing battle. But that actually, I was addicted to alcohol, heroin, and crack cocaine.
Yeah.
That was my holy trinity, as I called it. And when I did my very first detox for heroin, I had what I guess people would call a spiritual awakening. And certain people were put in my life that just kind of like showed me life in a different way that was more, conscious of other life, of earth and just things like that. And so kind of from there, I was doing community service, and I had one of the ladies that I was working with. She took care of me, and she was kind of like an old head, like a hippie, and she smoked me out and bring me lunch and stuff.
Yeah.
She was real cool, man, but she talked to the birds and she talked to the plants and all this kind of stuff, which, like, I'd never seen anything like that. So first I'm like, it's kind of fucking weird. But then there was some other experiences that were validated, and I was like, oh, so maybe there's something to this, And I grew up in a Roman Catholic household, and that's something that I battled with for a long, long time as well, as I didn't necessarily subscribe to it,
Absolutely.
It was
I get it.
forced on me. So I was an angry, depressed, lost young boy, and still kind of working through a lot of that, because it was deep and intergenerational, ancestral even, a lot of that trauma that was there. And so I moved to San Francisco. I did a geographical. I was like, I need to get the fuck out of LA. Let me go to SF. Wasn't exactly the best choice.
Sure.
For what I was dealing with, especially. And those were some of the darkest years of my life.
Yeah.
But also, like, there was a lot of beauty. I made a lot of long-lasting friends who are still some of my dearest to this day. And we've all kind of just been, some of us have kids now, and we get to do, we get to experience life in that way. So there is, it was a little bit of both. And that's always been my life, is this juggling act of, like, the street life and then, like, the spiritual path,
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Gemini in me. I don't know, dude.
Actually, we have a lot to talk about with that Gemini in your birth chart.
Let's go. But yeah, man. And then, that actually in San Francisco, I started to experiment more with, like, mushrooms and LSD and
amazing,
pretty typical, introduction.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and I find myself in the jungles of the Amazon, sitting with the teacher. My first teacher.
Was it Shipibo?
He was not Shipibo. He was what I guess they would call mestizo.
Mestizo, yeah. I'm familiar with the lineage.
He was actually Colombian and Chinese, which was really interesting. His father was like a martial arts master, and his mother was a Colombian native woman,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and that's where I think a lot of he pulls from both. He definitely incorporates both medicines into his style, but his mother's side is the one where the grandfathers were ayahuasqueros and stuff. So he was born into that life, and by the time I met him, he was already 48 years deep into that, and
Whoa.
he saved my life.
Incredible.
He saved my life, and he passed away actually 2 years ago. And so,
May his soul rest in peace.
yeah, I didn't get to go see him, but he's in my heart, and everything that he did for me is still, the ripple effects are still being felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing all of that, man. You know, I have a lot of admiration for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And do you know a lot about Gemini?
You know, astrology is not something, while like, I'm not gonna lie, man. I'll be totally honest.
Please.
Here. I check a horoscope every once in a while. I certainly don't live my life by that stuff, but I certainly believe in the interconnectedness, you know, to everything, even the celestial bodies. And you can't help but recognize that there are some patterns. You know, there's a lot of truth to some of that stuff. So, you know, but with that said, I didn't really ever dive into it, so I don't know a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a kind of a look at your birth chart. If we happen to stray away from this topic and get like really onto some other stuff, that's fine. But cool. In your birth chart, you have, you were born June 6th. So you're a Gemini. You were also born with Jupiter in Gemini and the midheaven, which is the career sign. So if we talk about Gemini as an archetypal tool, you know, what is the gift of the sign? Well, it's learning to cut your demons out of your life. So Gemini oftentimes is the life path of being an addict or having to learn boundaries, learning how far you can go with something before you have to set a limit. So it's the twins for a reason. Eesh. You know, so Gemini is my past life sign in my birth chart. Really? So according to astrology, I've already done that life path. Yeah. I hate alcohol. I'm not really into any substances besides plant medicine. I've done Gemini. Nice. So anytime I come across one, I'm like, I respect the hell out of you. You know, so if you want to just speak to the idea of cutting your demons out of your life or having to learn to set limits.
So it's still very much an active practice. Yeah. Obviously, you know, I don't believe we ever really start learning. To quote William Burroughs, he says, when you stop learning, you start dying. And that always kind of stuck with me for some reason. But let's see, you know, I've been aware, I guess, of my demons for the past like 10 years, like consciously, intentionally, you know, thanks to the medicine, of course.
Absolutely.
She shows you up close, like up front, like this is your shit. This is the shit you need to work through.
Yeah.
And so getting to see where a lot of that stuff comes from, where this shadow, right, character, like what's the story to this character? And I actually kind of like one of my artistic alter egos, if you want to call it that, is kind of like this. It is like me coming to terms or making peace with like that shadow aspect of myself.
Absolutely.
And so it like this character that I created called Blackie Valentino, which is like my musical self or whatever.
Yeah. Your moniker, persona.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really like the voice to that.
Yeah.
And the voice that gets to speak all of that stuff in a way where I don't feel like, you know, it feels safe to do so. And I have the gift of music through which to express it. So that is always actually, and that's not something that I was aware of really until like a few years ago when I returned to that. I kind of opened that, you know, pulled the skeleton out of the closet again, kind of dusted it off, and I was like, oh, you know, and by this time I'm doing shadow work. You know, I'm looking at it. I'm looking into the mirror, you know.
Yeah.
And so cutting the demons out has been a really painful process. Yeah. If I'm going to be straight up with you, like it has been brutal. Yeah. You know, and I think part of that is because there's this like twisted, it's almost like Stockholm syndrome or something, you know, where you are aware of this part of yourself that is like so self-sabotaging and destructive. And, you know, I was suicidal for, you know, most of my like teenage year, even into my 20s and stuff, and made several attempts and should have died 100 times over. But, you know, Spirit had us a plan.
You're meant to be here.
Absolutely. But let's see, where was I going with that?
Dodging your demons.
Dodging my demons. Well, so having that, being aware of that has been, man, I kind of lost myself there
That's
a little
okay.
bit.
I can pull the astrology back into it a little bit, So you're born with Jupiter right on top of the sun sign in your birth chart. So the sun is the ego. And with Jupiter there on the sun sign, what it does is it inflates the ego. Jupiter is the planet that's responsible for revealing where we are the most expanded. But if we're going to let everything through in our expansion, that's where our demons will be seen as well. So, with Gemini and the sun, that Gemini-Jupiter combination, the demon has to do with the ego. And the ego, it's a tool, of course, but the ego wants more. To want to fill the hole, to fill the void.
It's a bottomless pit.
It is. And
it's truly a bottomless pit.
Yeah. In your birth chart, your past life sign is Leo, the sign of the ego.
Really?
So you can't fill the ego anymore in this lifetime and make soul progress.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you. It'll just lead deeper down this one thing. So your destiny in this lifetime. So we've got Pisces and Leo on the past life placement. So escapism from the Pisces, but also you're gifted with creativity, music, art. You've got that developed.
Yeah.
But it's tied to ego as well. Your destiny in this lifetime, we've got the signs Virgo and Aquarius. So Virgo, it's your rising sign, learning to be yourself and be comfortable in yourself, managing your anxiety, learning how to deal with the details of life. But then the other side of your destiny this time around is to dissolve the ego. So that even in the face of intense hunger pangs or desire to do something, you can look that lion in the face and say, so what? So what does this mean to you?
Well, it's very reflective of actually kind of where I'm at now. I've never been more comfortable in my skin, in the sense of for example, the way you see me now, my attire has always been this way since I first started creeping into my mom's closet at like 11 and 12 years old, trying things on just because it called to me. And, and so from that point on, I loved it. I loved that was a way that I can express myself. And I wasn't trying to be different for different sake. It was simply what I liked. And I didn't consider myself like a cross-dresser or anything like that. It was just shit. Sometimes women's clothes fits better, man.
Yeah, right.
At least
a little more form
it fits better on me, I guess. I don't know, man. But so I was always aware of that. And that's something that I'm actually through this process, through the healing process, you have to learn to celebrate yourself too, especially when you come from a past of nothing but guilt, shame. Those are some of my dearest, oldest friends.
Your old demons.
Oh my God. And they're so ever so present, and they're ever so
are ego driven so much, guilt and shame, and they want to crush the ego. So your job is to wipe the slate clean of that so that you can be clean. Your square one in your life will always be that your ego is the first thing that needs to be under control.
Always.
But the destiny is you're meant to be a humanitarian. You're actually born to be a leader in this lifetime.
And I'm very aware of that.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of that. It's something I always kind of felt internally, but didn't know how to receive it, and B, what to do with it.
Yeah.
That's something that is very present in this incarnation, is learning to receive, embracing what I have, who I am, what I have to offer, and really stepping into that, embodying that for the greater good of the people around me, because because of precisely what you just said,
Yeah.
So I always kind of felt that, and then going down the medicine path, it was shown to me, and it's just and then clearly, like I said, between the overdoses and the suicide attempts, and also just the freak accidents, there's so many times I should have just been gone.
Yeah.
And it always,
Spirit had a plan.
Always came back to nope, not your time. There's something to do here. And so to become aware of what that is, maybe not exactly the details precisely, of it looks exactly like this, but I have a general idea. I know that at the core of it is to be of service to humanity.
Yeah.
To starting with myself so that I can take care of others,
That's right. Like an airplane.
Exactly.
Put your own oxygen mask first, man.
That's very true.
So we have this energy. Leo's one of my past life signs too. So my whole thing, I always need to make sure my self-esteem, my ego is under control, because that's the part of myself that if it's wounded or hit on, it'll destroy me.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be my foundation. So I've got Leo and Gemini as my past life signs. You've got Pisces and Leo. So you're creative, you're a spiritualist, but you've got you have actually a strong ego. We want to like hold it up. We want to put it in the light and say like, look how fucking cool this guy is, you know, so that you can hold yourself and your medicine and then give it to other people so that you're not, you know, when you're a medicine man, people want to project on you all day. So that's why Aquarius is a good one for you, because you're like, whew, wipe it clean.
That's where I'm at, especially right now.
Yeah.
Because even like, for example, when I met you at the conference, all day long, people just like,
they want to project.
Oh my God, dude, the ikaro or the food or the your style, like all day long. And it's like, for me, that makes me uncomfortable because I'm still learning how to like be comfortable receiving it. Being like, okay, that's sure. Like, thank you. Maybe not sure. Like,
of course.
But you know, thank you. And then just like you said, just let it wash right off. Rather than like save it and be like, oh yeah, I'm cool. I'm this. I'm all of these things.
I get it, man. I have the same thing.
Knock on wood. So far, I've never really had a problem as far as like being arrogant. I think it's hard to be arrogant when you're like suicidal and stuff.
Absolutely.
So
but also, oftentimes
I was on that end of the ego spectrum, you know. But it does actually like ultimately present itself with equal potency and with equal like capacity to fucking consume and destroy.
Yeah, well, ego death is just as egoic as ego expansion.
Yeah.
It just depends to what level you're taking it to.
Absolutely.
So wanting to off yourself is also an ego-driven thing, because you're like, God, I can't stand myself so much that I want to remove myself completely. And ego's a tool.
Absolutely.
We have to learn to work with it. And the tool that you're being given is, well, your ego is you're a spiritualist with great taste and the ability to stick with people. Leo comes with loyalty.
Yeah.
Whereas Aquarius, the lesson is like, okay, maybe you need to know when to like actually let go of things, whether it's a substance, a person, a relationship, a job, because you've got the loyalty part down. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It's
Speak on that a little bit.
It's very reflective of who I think that I am.
Yeah.
You know, just from my experience in life, you know, I've always been growing up in LA in the 90s. I had to fight a lot, you know, especially being like, I was never bullied, but I was targeted a lot. And I feel like the difference is when you're bullied, you don't defend yourself.
Yeah.
I was targeted all the time, but I always defended myself. And so that kind of like built a reputation or whatever. But 90% of my fights weren't mine. I was fighting other people's fights. I was defending
loyalty.
Other people. Yeah. And that's like, and then, you know, throughout my life, I've had elders, you know, kind of like recognize certain things in me and be like, you have like this protector quality, or like you have this like leader quality, like you know, in the tribal sense. And those were always like the most beautiful, like, compliments or you know, things that came from the elders, and was like some deep shit, like, oh, because that's what I really felt connected to, is like this you know, protector of the tribe, you know. And that's like all of you are my tribe, and nothing gets to me more than seeing other people have injustices done to them. That's like my instant switch to turn me to like a not so spiritual guy.
Yeah. Well,
but that's, you know, that's part of the shadow.
It's part of the shadow.
Learning to dance with that.
Well, and as we talk about the shadow, your personal life placement in your birth chart, so we're talking home, childhood, the earlier years in life, and also what home means to you, is in Sagittarius. So that's
can I just point out two things?
Sure.
Leo and Sagittarius. My son is a Sagittarius.
Okay.
His
personal
mother,
life placement.
And his mother is a Leo.
Okay. So that relationship was probably like natural with your,
It was instantly like,
because you've developed Leo, so you know how to relate to Leo.
I guess so, yeah.
You know, but then your son being Sag, so that's your personal life placement.
That's my baby.
So it makes a lot of sense. But as a child, the Sagittarius like personal life placement is a tricky one, because Sagittarius is the sign of demons.
Okay.
It's like having to dodge demons, run away from things, learning how to, you know, okay, shades of gray, learning when it's okay to like not tell the full truth so that you don't get beat up by someone.
Sure.
That's kind of what Sagittarius teaches. How do you escape or get away with something? How do you dodge things? Where are the shades of gray in life? How does this pertain to your earlier years of life?
It's one of one of the tools, I guess, that's kept me alive.
Yeah. Well, you were raised with demons, so to speak.
Oh,
So
baby, man. Like, I know how to creep through the gutters and the alleyways and slip out the back, man. I don't know. No, truly, like,
talk to me.
I can laugh about it,
Sure.
but man, I mean, so many times I should have, like I said earlier, should have died. In some of those cases, like, it was out of my control. It was literally just God being like, nope.
Wow.
But in lots of other cases where there's other people involved and maybe weapons and stuff involved, you know, smoking crack like doesn't bring you around a nice crowd.
Sure.
So being around those kinds of people in San Francisco and like the Tenderloin and in the SROs and stuff, like really, really depraved, dark places, which is like scary to even reflect on and be like, what the fuck was I doing there?
Yeah.
How was I okay with that? How was I like living that life day to day, you know? And I lived in one of those for a while. But yeah, I don't know. I've always just kind of had this capacity, and I certainly, being aware of it as a teenager, I used it to my advantage. You know,
Yeah.
I charm the pants off any police officer, and most of the time get off of whatever. You know, I've been in jail many times. I've never had to serve any serious sentences.
Sagittarius.
And I think that's just because I always knew how to get away, man.
So my destiny sign is Sagittarius.
Oh, yeah?
It's in the sign Sagittarius and the Aquarius part of the birth chart. So I have a lot to learn from you.
Oh, okay.
You know, but also I've
do
done Gemini, and that's what you're working with
That's
now.
what
So
I'm
we have a
on.
lot to kind of.
I love it.
We could work together, man.
This is beautiful.
You know?
This is the start of something.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. But it just goes to show that the birth chart really does speak to your experience, you know, having to dodge and bob and weave. Like, I'm not very good at dodging danger.
Yeah.
You know, the Gemini way of doing it is like, just tell the truth and like just do it in a way where like, well, this is black and this is white.
Right.
And like maybe Sagittarius is like, well, you can read the writing on the wall. Not everything needs to be spelled out for you.
Yeah.
So although you're a Gemini, you've got the sun and Jupiter on top of each other. Jupiter's the Sagittarius planet.
Okay.
So you're like a Sagittarian Gemini.
Ooh, I love that.
So do you like traveling? That's
I
another.
love to travel.
That's another natural part of this kind of energy.
I love to travel.
Where have you been?
Actually, you know, not as many places as I would like, but
Psychedelic travel for sure. You know,
of
plant
course,
medicine.
You know, I've been to the Amazon.
That's
you know?
right, baby.
You know, I've been to Peru. You know,
Yeah, I'm
spent
dying to
a lot
go
of time
soon.
down there. Oh yeah, I remember you saying that you were going for Dieta,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's
With the
beautiful.
Shipibo tribe.
Oof, they're intense, man. That's gonna be very beautiful.
That's right. My teacher right now is Shipibo, so
Nice.
I got to follow the lineage, you know.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful one.
Yeah.
They've done a really good job of preserving like the potency.
Yeah.
And El Salvador and Mexico. You know, I spent a lot of my childhood there. I'm half Mexican.
What's the other half?
Moroccan.
Oh, cool.
So
Right
Morocco,
on.
yeah.
Moroccan food is so
And-
good.
I love Moroccan food. It's actually what I cooked for the VIP party. I don't know if you.
There you go.
Were you a speaker?
I was not.
you
No,
were just
no.
an
I was
attendee,
just there
okay.
with the psychedelic spotlight.
Nice. They had me cook for like, you know, all the speakers and stuff the night before. And I
Amazing.
whipped up
Oh
some
my
Moroccan
God.
food. But so yeah, Peru, Salvador, Mexico, Morocco. I feel like I'm missing one, but that's pretty much
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, there's going to be a lot more travel on the horizon.
I feel it.
You know.
I'm actually going back to Peru hopefully in January.
Oh my God.
And
Are you doing
then,
dieta?
I am.
Oh my God. I know it's very private, so I'm not going to ask you which plants you're working with. That's not something that needs to be
Something for me to
broadcasted.
know.
Exactly. They say that you don't share what plants you diet because you don't want other shamans to know your weak spots. Because if somebody knows, like, oh, they worked with this plant, so you know, they attack them
I
with
know
their.
how to like
Yeah.
counter that and stuff.
Yeah, man.
You know, that's wild, man. It's a whole nother world down there, and the spiritual warfare is very real. And
Yeah.
I've you know been able to witness it, and it's
Oh, yeah.
fucking scary.
I just did a dieta like 2 weeks ago, and there was like psychic attacks happening on us during.
Yeah.
And like my teacher, she's so good. She just, you know, got rid of it. But like it took like a good like 20 minutes out of our ceremony. So you got to know how to protect yourself.
Oh yeah, that's number one. I mean, that's what really a shaman, you know,
Yeah.
a real one. That's like fundamental.
Oh yeah, that's like the
That's
101.
fundamental. You got to learn because again, it comes back to taking care of yourself so you
Yeah.
can take care of others. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, your career sign in your birth chart is Gemini. So you're actually here to help other people cut their demons out. Rather than helping them dodge them, you're just here to help them cold turkey.
Let's go.
Gemini is cold turkey. So is there anyone in your life that you've already been working in this capacity with?
So, through some of my studies were in rehab centers.
Sure.
Which like, I'm serious, man, because you get assigned a therapist and, there's a whole, the program I was in was like freaking military prison style. So there was like a lot of structure, a lot of stuff, but in that place, actually, I found myself in a really good position because it was like a work exchange program.
Yeah.
So it's free, but you work like full time. And there's two or three positions. Like most people are in the warehouse, and then the reward, sort of position is like the front desk, and then there's the kitchen crew.
Yeah.
I got promoted into the front desk because of my, I guess, natural leadership capacity. Like working in the warehouse, I worked really good. I have a really strong work ethic, And then when I had time off, I'd be out there helping other people. And so they're like, why don't you start training these people? And blah, 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 blah. So it got to the point where they're like, you'd be better somewhere else. And so in that space, then I got to be, even though in the warehouse, I got to show up for a lot of people. Like there's a lot, you get to know people. And it's really funny, man, because, you look at me the way that I am, and everybody there would say the same thing. They're like, you? That stuff? Like, really? They hear my story, and they're like, you? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck you want me to say, Yeah. And, but it'd be, I could just imagine it like me and, this big, like Aryan face tatted dude, like crying on my shoulder, or like, I got to be of service to a lot of people there. And that was another one of those things that I just kind of fell very naturally into. And I actually got kicked out of that center. I was just coming up on completing my 6 months, and I got kicked out of that center for essentially like overstepping my bounds, going out of my way to like help somebody who was whatever. Long story short, I was like, it wasn't a relapse situation or nothing like that. I was totally good.
Yeah, you're following the rules.
I was fucking beyond following the rules. I was, I guess, following the rules too good.
Right. Well, maybe
like, that's not your work.
Right.
And I got heated because I was like, I thought we were supposed to help people. And I swore, you're not supposed to swear. They're like, that's it. You're going back to the warehouse. I was like, the fuck I am, man. The fuck I am. I'm out of here. Because then I just saw like right through all that shit. And I was like, well, that didn't sit right with me. So I actually was just like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And later that night, on my way to a meeting that all the guys would go to on, whatever day it was, I saw like 60 of the dudes get on the bus, and I shit you not, man, like there was just a roar, an explosion of like celebration.
Yeah.
They were like stoked to see me and celebrated me in this like heroic way. And they're like, dude, everybody was about to walk out when they found out what happened and blah, blah, blah. And that was like so dear to me and so special, but it also was, made me more aware of like this power, right? These things that I have and how to use them in a good way. I think that was a good example of using it in a good way, and then getting to be celebrated for it or whatever.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Well, it's just interesting. Virgo is the other destiny sign of yours. So Virgo is learning to color inside the lines, no matter how monotonous it is.
No.
So Virgo is all about like reality and following the rules, and everything has its cut and dry, and like, it's not a very fun sign to be going into, because, my dad's destiny sign is Virgo, and, he had creative abilities as a child and talent with art and this sort of thing. And he left all of those things behind and became a doctor, just a regular rheumatologist. Cool. So Virgo life path is more practical. It's a little bit more stodgy. So you're here, you've developed the magic and the medicine. You're here to learn, okay, how do I color inside the lines and not innovate and heal others? I mean, but you've got the Aquarius too, so it's also being of service.
All right.
So you heal yourself and learn to color in the lines so that you can teach other people to do it. That's really the whole point. So does that resonate for you at all?
Yeah. In a you're hearing my expressions. It's like
totally.
And that's real, man. And that was always a thing, I never considered myself a rebellious person by any means. but I was strong-willed. Like, I knew what I wanted, and that's what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't to piss anybody off. It was just like, I don't agree with that, so I'm gonna do this. That obviously, I got kicked out of a lot of schools, lots of meetings, and they really forced. And this is like big ups to mom for this one. Every school, every teacher, every principal was like, fucking give them the drugs, give them the drugs.
Whoa.
Thank God she never did that, because who knows how I would have turned out.
Yeah, man.
No disrespect to anybody who did or
Of course.
Still. But I'm happy that she didn't do that.
Yeah.
Because I saw some adverse reactions with friends who were
Heavily medicated
exactly.
I've seen it as well.
Yeah, it's very real.
Well, while we talk about the topic of like the mother or emotions in your birth chart, so you're a Gemini, you've got Virgo rising, so you come off very Virgo-like, which is very clean, put together, coloring inside the lines, so to speak, but still innovative. You still
Sure.
got the Leo.
Yeah.
But your moon sign is Cancer.
Yep.
Are you familiar with this placement?
What I have heard is, emotional,
Yeah. Well, this is where the moon is home.
which is fucking spot on.
Yeah. Cancer moon people, they are typically some of the most psychic in the zodiac. So in your sleep, in your dream life, or even in your waking life, have you ever experienced spirits? Have you ever witnessed or felt energies?
Fucking since from a young age, man.
Talk to us about it. Let's hear it.
I got stories. The earliest that I can recall, well, and this one I don't recall, but when I remember the apartment, there's the memory is in the body.
Yeah.
The body remembers it. Mentally, I don't. But anytime I think about that apartment, and I had to be a year old,
Okay.
like in my toddler years, definitely, I get a really bad feeling. I get just like, ugh, I get chills, man. Well, long story short, the family that lived there before we did was a single mother and her child who was also my age. She suffocated her child
Oh my God.
in that apartment. So he died there, and that baby was still there because
Yeah.
they'd hear balls bouncing, dishes breaking, like lots of noise and ruckus, like there's a bunch of kids, even laughter and things like that, and thinking it'd be me, and it wasn't me. And
Yeah.
until finally one night something happened, and my mom was like, had enough of it, and spoke to the lady, and the lady told her the truth.
Yeah.
And then there was another place only a couple years after where I would be babysat by this lady who was also taking care of this old man, Frank, who I can hear his voice now. And in that house, I remember it very vividly. There was a baby or a child, a small person, whatever it was, I couldn't tell. It almost looked kind of like extraterrestrial even.
Sure.
That would always be not always, but many, many nights would be in the closet, just looking at me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't afraid, but I was afraid, like it wasn't emitting any sort of threat, but I was just like, ooh, or maybe that's just my interpretation of it now because it's so real in my memory. I'm like, now it kind of gives me the creeps or something.
Yeah,
but at the time, like, and it would show up all the time. There was a lot of magical things that
So
happened
you could
there.
perceive it.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, even with like extraterrestrials and stuff, I've had lots of encounters with those, and I've had some like direct transmissions and stuff.
And this is without psychedelics.
This is without psychedelics.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
So for anyone listening who wants to doubt.
Frank, actually, the man whose house I'm talking about, when he passed away, I heard him. Like we brought the babysitter over to stay with us, and he came to the window one night when I was in the bathroom, and he was calling out to the lady. Her name was Lucine.
In spirit.
In spirit.
Wow. And you could see it.
I couldn't see him, but he was right because the window was like these shutters that fold, so you can't really see outside. And it was nighttime, but it was clear.
So you could hear it, perceive it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Cancer Moon is strong in your birth
Big
chart.
time.
Interesting.
Yeah, those are always fun stories to tell.
Yeah. I'm all about it. That's why I started a podcast about it, right? You've got the planet Mars right on top of the moon as well. So we see, sometimes this translates to fighting with your family, fighting with the mother. There can be a little bit of that stuff kind of going on. But also what makes you the most angry is if someone messes with your family. Mm-hmm. That's like the claws are going to come out then.
Absolutely.
So.
And I shared that earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. We're also seeing this asteroid known as Chiron. Are you familiar with it?
I am not.
So Chiron represents our greatest pain, which leads to our most profound healing. And in your birth chart, Chiron is in Cancer. So this is talking about some kind of family wound that you might have carried from a very young age. Sometimes it's a mother wound, but it's also in the 10th house. So that's the father sector of the birth chart and the career sector of the birth chart. So there's a wound between the personal life and the public image. What are you doing for work? How are you making money? But also, where is home? Who is home? Can you speak on this a little bit?
So my father was like mostly absent in my life, which was a big wound in this, that occurred in this lifetime.
Yeah.
That certainly carried out and played itself out in my later years via addiction, substance abuse, suicidal tendencies and stuff. Because I programmed myself early enough, being young and intuitive and left to my own resources. I understood that, okay, like I must have done something wrong to not be received that way. So I am now not worthy, not good enough. Pretty common story.
Well,
as
that's
well.
all ego stuff.
Oh yeah,
right?
big time. And
you're programmed.
I fed that one like a motherfucker, man. And it was huge. So there's that. And then it's me and my mom.
Yeah.
My stepdad is, I have a stepdad, but he was like, didn't like to get involved, and I didn't have any male role models in my life whatsoever. I was raised by women, straight up, period.
Yeah.
And I'm actually like currently working on something with my mother. It was brought to my attention, and I had already seen this in a vision in one of my first ceremonies with grandmother 12 years ago or something. And then it was brought up recently by a clairvoyant individual. As it's really present in my life, she kind of touched my back and was like, oh, she whispers in my ear, she goes, you're carrying your mother's pain.
The mother
you
wound.
agreed. And then she repeated it twice and emphasized the agreement part. She says, you agreed to come here and take your mother's pain, to essentially come and help her heal it, right? To close that. Because there's deep, I think for many people, but certainly in my lineage, deep ancestral pain.
Yeah.
Especially, as a Mexican.
Absolutely.
Deeply. And I'm also finding out as I get older, because my mother is kind of a woman of secrets, and now I guess she's opening up more or whatever, as I'm kind of initiating this process to get her into a place where I can really like fucking put the gloves on, and get to work on mama to get her well. There's a lot of alcoholism in the family, and so mine and my mom's dynamic is interesting because we're deeply connected in life.
Yeah.
Like we've shared other lifetimes.
It shows in the birth chart. You've got 4 placements in Cancer, the sign of the mother. Your moon sign is there. Mars is right on top of it. So you've got the conflict, but also the closeness.
Yes.
And then Venus is on top of Chiron. So you got to be mindful not to project your mommy issues, if you will, onto any relationship that you're having romantically.
And that's happened.
Yeah.
And that's happened. And that's something, some of my greatest teachers have been my mother and my ex-partner.
Yeah.
For sure. No medicine.
No medicine.
Just the medicine of life experience, And so, I would say that so far everything is like kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah. Well, I've read thousands of birth charts, maybe more than that at this point. I've been reading astrology since I was 18 years old.
Cool.
So I think it's a good tool if someone has this done before they go in to do a plant medicine ceremony. Because all of a sudden I have intentions. I have things that my weaknesses are being put into tangible words and form for me to work with. So let's see what else you're working with here. You have a fabulously aspected Mercury in your birth chart. So singing, writing, and it's in the sign of Taurus, so pleasure, being able to do these things in a very pleasurable or romantic way. And you mentioned a little bit about your music, your art. If you want to talk about it, plug it, how can people find it?
Sure, yeah.
And what's your inspiration while writing?
Oh, God. Music is just, it's in me. It's in all of us. We're all essentially, the music of God, of the universe.
Yeah. But it's definitely in you, man. You got what we look for.
And I'm so, it took me a long time to actually receive that. I always felt music in my life, and I would, have pretend concerts in the backyard as a little kid. And anytime I had friends over, it's like, all right, you're gonna play this, and they're like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, no, man. So I was like living out this fantasy, but my ego was such a restriction, and it truly did not allow me to and then growing as a teenager, 12, 13, my best friends they have instruments, they have bands, and nobody ever said you can't join the band. I told myself, I'm not good enough to do that stuff. I can't do that. Like, they can, I can't.
That's the ego.
And so it wasn't until actually that detox experience when I kicked heroin for the first time and I had time on my hands. One of my best friends gives me his guitar and he goes, you need to do something else with your time. Why don't you fucking learn to play guitar? And it was just like, boom, off to the races.
Whoa.
I held on to it, and it was my medicine through that recovery period. And then it was like, bam, once I learned a couple chords, it was just like my entire world opened up.
Yeah.
And then, in San Francisco, like not being new to the city and not having friends and stuff and wanting to like make more elaborate music, I had to just like buy all the instruments myself and learn how to play them.
That's Gemini for you.
And then
quick learner,
man. And I'm so grateful for that. That's something that I love that happened that way.
Yeah.
But I look back at it sometimes. I'm like, what would have happened if I started younger? But there's no time for that. Regardless, like it was there, and as soon as I allowed it to be activated, it was on. And so, Blackie Valentino is my current like biggest artistic endeavor, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
A little bit of like psychedelic soul.
Hell yeah.
Some funk, some cool.
Who are your influences?
Oh God. Well, I don't know if they can see
Oh,
that.
funkadelic.
That's a funkadelic tattoo. So anybody who knows me, well, they're like, oh, that dude, yeah, fucking P-funk all day. And there's actually more. It's not so much like the funk genre. First of all, there's like no deeper cuts than early funkadelic, and just throughout their whole thing. But it was a lot of the philosophy, and it was like ghetto spiritual wisdom. It was street spiritual wisdom. When George Clinton's talking about the one and free your mind and your ass will follow, like he was dropping all this stuff that in some interviews he'd call it what would he call it, like some voodoo, like whatever, like witch doctor stuff, where he was just like tripping on acid and like talking gibberish, but really I think he was just channeling some shit. And it made its way into like the ghetto mentalities, right? And it was like would empower people. So for me, it was really powerful in that way. But anyways, I grew up in LA, so I was surrounded by my mom's like romantic era Mexican stuff, which I still love.
Yeah, man. That's some good stuff.
Oh yeah, it's timeless. And oldies, like, lowrider oldies. It's R&B and soul. And then of course the rock and roll came later, and the hip hop was always around. So and honestly, like I feel like everybody says this, oh, I love it all, but man, like I love it all. I love music.
You can put your hand in many pies, if you will.
Warm, cold, whatever. So it's hard to say what exactly my influences are, because I think one of my gifts is to be able to pull from so much and like consolidate it and make it my own version of that, And so that's, if you listen to Blackie Valentino, which I do have a Spotify, and I have an album that I just recorded with a dear friend of mine, Jeffrey T.D. Starr, here in Echo Park, and it's one of my proudest works ever. So I'm really excited to share it.
What's the album titled?
It's called, actually, Gemini in Blue.
Yes. Hey, look at that.
Gemini in Blue, Good Place for a Bad Trip. And it's essentially my shadow work on wax. It is like my shadow process put to wax.
Gemini in Blue.
Yeah. So I'm really proud of it, and I'm really excited to share it, because that was something I definitely drew from, I was definitely channeling some George there, where I was like, how can I turn my experiences into a palpable, like pretty much how can I express this the way that I just would? Like I'm on the streets, like shooting the shit with my homies. And it comes out that way. So I'd love to plug you in with anything, but I don't have.
Hey, whenever you do have it.
Moment, I do have a single on my Spotify account, which I just recently made. So, there's a lot of catch up happening in my life, because so much of it went to getting lost and then coming out and healing and stuff like that. But
it's part of the journey.
That's right. So there is that, and I have a music video that I just recorded for that I'm going to release probably in the next week.
Amazing.
Or so, done with some very dear friends, and then I played for the conference. I played in Icaro, and so I definitely participate in the musical aspects of ceremonies.
Yeah.
And
You have a gorgeous voice.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Wow, that took me a long time to be comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then once we fucking get the ego out of the way, it's like
get the ego intact,
so
not
you're not
out of the way.
Sound like right.
You want to hold the ego.
Make it
this is who I am.
Right,
yes,
exactly.
Bring it to the table.
So my voice is nasally or whatever.
Who cares?
This is my range, like whatever.
That's what you got to work with.
Sing it authentically, and nothing else will matter.
That's it, man.
That's kind of my take on that and a lot of life. But
yeah. Well, we see in the birth chart that Chiron asteroid. That's the one that's responsible for the greatest pain and the healing.
Okay.
That one's opposing the planets Neptune and Saturn. So Neptune is art and music and the spiritual side of life. So you're actually healing your mother wound through art. But Saturn is there too. So it wants you to train really hard to get that healing. That's where your hardest lesson is in this lifetime. Healing the mother wound while focusing on your creativity.
Yeah.
And you had this kind of like thing of like, oh, it couldn't be me. But life was like, no, train harder. Push yourself further.
Totally.
So, Amir, I just want to say thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. If you could plug yourself one more time, just how people can follow you on social media.
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. My full name, Amir Ouaddi. You can find my Instagram for my musical project at BlackieValentino_official on Instagram. A website will be up soon. In the meantime, just got to catch me.
Yeah.
I get around, so you'll see me.
For the lucky ones who do.
Oh, thank you so much.
And then just a final announcement for anyone listening. Again, my name is Danny Santos. This is the Astro Daddy podcast. Please be very mindful of any scam accounts pretending to be me on Instagram, TikTok, or other accounts. I'm getting a lot of impersonators.
Imposters.
Yes, who are messaging my followers, asking them for money, saying that they are drawn to get a reading or to give a reading for money. So I will never message you. And if I do, I would always confirm my identity with my name, the date, and a voice note. Any last words you have, Amir, before we shut it out?
Nobody is going to message you offering to channel anything for you on Instagram, okay?
That's
just it's a
That's
scam.
just the way it goes.
But other than that, man, love yourself, love each other. I love you. I love you both. Thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
Amir, it is my honor. It is my pleasure. Thank you for being my third guest on Astro Daddy.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Hey.
Hey.